Hi, and welcome to Season 2 of Big Sound Small Town, the podcast that spotlights the talented and diverse musicians in small towns and communities. This season we're branching out to include the community of people who make it possible for musicians to be able to perform their music, the producers, the recording engineers, the venue owners, and many others, and as always, the small town musicians. Remember, small town doesn't mean small talent. Hear their stories.
Sitting back listening to the voices grumbling, beggars and drunkards and poor men mumbling. 13 days in a gray-barred hell and nobody wants to go my bail. I want to see the sunshine, I want to hear my baby cry. I want to get back and see one more day in Dover. Laid up in a boxcar, the stories unfold. Hungry tramps talking about a pot of gold. I watch the liquor and coffee stains darken on the shirt, they're touched by the rain. I want to see a snowfall, I want to hear a robin call. I want to get back and see one more day in Dover. It's a late night sleeping in a rundown shed, rolled up in a blanket, I'm half past dead. Cars rushing by through the wind and the rain, being cold and alone drive me insane. I want to take a hot bath, I want to hear my lady laugh. I want to get back and see one more day in Dover. I want to get back and live one more day in Dover.
Today on Big Sound Small Town, we're in the Earl Scruggs Center, and my guest is singer-songwriter Dale Brittain. Welcome to the show, Dale.
Thank you, Sandy. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. All right. You've just played a couple songs.
All right.
At what age did you discover you had the voice that you have?
I guess when I was about 15 or 16.
Did
Somebody else kind of pointed it out to me. I didn't really realize it, but and it was around that same time that I heard James Taylor the first time, which was kind of what set me off on this whole thing.
Now, were you singing before that somewhere?
Not real. Well, no, not really. I mean, the only kind of singing I ever did was my grandparents used to stand me up in the kitchen and make me sing Brown Mountain Lights when I was like 6 years old.
That's pretty cool.
So, that was, but other than performing,
Did you like doing that?
Yeah, I loved it. I liked singing. I just never thought I was going to be a singer.
Right.
I just never, it wasn't something. I loved music. I mean, it's appropriate that we're in the Earl Scruggs Center because, I'm looking at an Earl Scruggs poster on the wall because the first music I remember hearing was banjo music.
Oh, really?
Was Earl Scruggs. Yeah. Was 78 records that my dad had, and I just fell in love with that sound of that banjo, so.
It is a good sound.
This is kind of like a full circle thing,
So, when did you start playing guitar?
I guess I was about 10 or so.
So you had started doing that before you started playing?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I would sing like Okie from Muskogee and stuff like that, But I wasn't playing. I didn't start playing out anymore until I was probably 18 or so.
Okay.
But yeah, I started playing around 10, and my cousin was Johnny Fisher, who was.
Yeah, I know Johnny.
He was a great guitar player, and he's the person that really. He was 2 years older than me, so he heard about all the music, like Creed's Clearwater Revival. He turned me on to. first time I ever heard Born to Be Wild was in his bedroom on one of those little box, record player things. And so he kind of led me down the path and showed me some stuff. And then we put together a band in our teens, and I ended up being the drummer.
Oh,
so
so how did that transition?
Well, I wasn't that great of a guitar player anyway, at that time. So it worked out fine. I had a little cheap set of drums, and I was singing Stairway to Heaven and, trying to be Bonzo back there on the drum. It was me and Johnny and a guy named Danny Lale.
Yeah, I know Danny Lale too.
You know Danny? Yeah, he played he was in a band with his uncle for a long time somewhere. But
played at Ponderosa for years.
Yeah, he was a good guy.
Yeah.
We were a power trio.
Yeah.
Me and Johnny and Danny.
Well, that's three good musicians.
We sounded okay. We didn't really have PA or anything, but I mean we were doing like Behind Blue Eyes and I was singing all that stuff. But that was just in high school, and then Johnny went off and kind of became a real country musician. He ended up in the house band at Country City when Randy Travis was there.
Right.
And he was in the Possum Holler, down in New York. He was in that house band for years. So he went on and really had what I consider to be a success because he was making a living.
Yeah,
he was. That was always the goal for me too. To make a living at it somehow, but didn't actually pan out. But
So what happens from there?
Well, let's see. Kind of went that way through high school. I met a guy named James Crossley when I was 16 years old, and James was probably 20 or 21 at the time. And he was in a band called Reborn Hope, which was a great rock, the best band around here.
Yeah, they were.
James and Russell Walker, Boo Knipe, and Phil Pendleton. So those guys they kind of adopted me, and I just hung around. They'd come get me and take me to gigs with them and stuff. It was cool. I thought I was the coolest guy in the room, And then when I graduated high school, I kind of lost touch with those guys, and I went out west for a month and bummed around out there. Then I went to Rhode Island, bummed around up there for about a month, and decided to come home. And I came home the weekend of the August Jam.
Oh, okay.
So I cooked a ride with these girls. I was in Richmond, and these girls in a VW Bug I was going home. And they said, well, we're going to August Jam. And I said, well, I'll go with you. So we got down there. Of course, I didn't have any money. I didn't have a ticket or anything. And I ended up being one of the people in the big crush of the gate crashers like that day.
Right.
In fact, I found a picture online that I'm in. Right before I got pushed through. I didn't have any choice,
How old would you have been then?
I was 18.
18.
Yeah, but the thing about it was I had left my suitcase in those girls' car, and of course I ran into a friend, and I woke up the next morning, everybody was gone. I went out there hoping they'd at least set my suitcase out. Well, it was gone. Had all my clothes in it, so that was kind of bottomed out there, and so. Shortly after that, I joined the Navy, which was a huge mistake. So I spent about, I went AWOL several times until they finally kicked me out. Before they kicked me out, they stuck me in the Newport, Rhode Island brig for 6 months.
Now, were you writing and singing at this point?
Oh yeah, I was writing songs. I wrote a song in the Cleveland County Jail while I was waiting for the Navy to come pick me up.
That's a great story.
Which I still do to this day. And I always, especially if I'm in Shelby, I say, I wrote this song right down the street here in the Cleveland County Jail.
Is there any chance at some point today we can hear you do that?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot.
All right.
Sure. Yeah, it's in a lower key. Maybe I can. But
that's a good story.
I wrote the words. Of course, I didn't have a guitar.
Of course.
With me at the time, But yeah, it's called Dover, and it was really based on. I just kind of pictured like Dover, New Hampshire, or something, and everybody sort of took it as me meaning Dover Mill.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's the same deal. It's just a fictional place. But when I got out, I came home. I got back up with James. I actually moved in with him and his wife, Kathy. They were living down in Patterson Springs. And he was in a band then called TNT with Patty Loveless and Terry Loveless. Mm-hmm. And there was a guy named Roger, I can't remember his last name, who was a great guitar player. And another guy, the bass player that they called Hawk. I never knew his name either. But they were playing in a place in Gastonia, 321 Club. It's one of those illegal nightclubs where you go up to the door, it's a steel door, and they slide the little thing back and look out at you. So they played there from 11 at night till 4 in the morning, 4 days a week. So I didn't have a job, so that's where I just hung out with them and listened to Patty sing. And, I mean, she was singing like Barracuda, My Heart, and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, I remember Joan Jett.
But she'd do Silver Wings, and she was obviously had the country voice. So.
And Terry was such a fine singer, too.
Oh, gosh, he was a great singer, great drummer. First person I ever saw live playing double bass drums was Terry.
Yeah.
So we started doing like some little trio, like vocal stuff. So around that time, there was a guy named Donnie McIntyre who was from around here who was a dobro player, and he kept trying to get me to play grass. He said, you should try it, but I never really did. But he actually took me up to took me and James up to Hayne Coleman's house one night.
Yeah.
And so I met Hayne there, Butch, Richard Walter, met all those guys that have been a part of my life ever since, musically. And
they've been a big part of the music here in Cleveland County.
I mean, Hayne's still
he's
getting
done
at it.
He's been on the show,
So I listened to that. Yeah. I had forgotten about him. Some of those guys like Ken Waldrop and them used to go skydiving. So for a while, they were in. I never could get up the nerve for it, but anyway, that night that we were there was actually, I think they were having a planning meeting to have the first Rose Hill pig picking.
Oh, okay.
So they asked me, I played a couple songs, they asked me to play at it, and they put me on at what I thought was the perfect time. It was about 6 in the evening, it was an all-day thing. They had a beer truck there, and they had barbecue and stuff.
I remember that.
Everybody was settling down with their plates, and they put me on. I did like 45 minutes. Terry and Patty got up and sang a couple songs with me, and that was kind of what made my name around here as far as singing, So, but I didn't, nothing ever really came of that until about a year later. Richard, I knew Richard, but Richard Walter, but we didn't really see each other a whole lot. But I got into a band. There was a bunch of people that hung around over at Sedgefield Apartments, and I met Tim Krotz, who was living there. And a guy named Al Bates, who's my best friend to this day. I got to throw in a plug for Al there. I know he's going to be listening to this. But Tim and Larry Wyatt and I put together a band called Sedgefield Bluegrass. And Richard was the bass player.
Of course.
So, but he was also in Smoking Grass.
Yeah.
So we were all at a party one night at Rose Hill and just jamming. And Art Brooks, who was in Smoking Grass, the banjo player, asked me if I wanted to join the band. And to me, that was like being asked to join the Beatles or something. I thought.
That's cool.
It was something. I was really, because I knew about them. I knew they had great harmonies and stuff.
Who was in there when you joined?
When I joined, it was Richard, Art, Andy Morgan, and then me.
Right.
And I don't know what happened to the guy before me. I don't know if he moved away or something happened. He wasn't playing with them anymore, So we started rehearsing a lot. Now I heard Darrell Allison say that we were playing Note Perfect Newgrass Revival. I don't know about that, but we had a lot of energy.
Darrell's been on the show too.
Yeah, that's why I heard him say that was on the
he did. Yes, he did. That's where I was going with that.
Yeah, when I heard that, I was like, well, thanks, but we were, we had a lot of energy. We were real enthusiastic and stuff. But we started practicing a lot. Started looking for gigs. The first gig that we got that was paying when I was in the band was at Mickey's Pub in Spartanburg.
Okay.
So we got down there and we did set up sound check, and Mickey came over, the guy, and he says, Toy Caldwell's here. And we looked over in the corner, and there's this guy with this big hat,
cowboy hat,
that I think had a stuffed bird on it, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not, it was very ornate,
right.
Whatever. I don't know if it was actually a bird or not, but it was a lot of feathers and stuff. So, but we got up and played the first set, and I just kind of forgot he was over there, and we did our thing, and I was sitting on the edge of the stage during the break, and he came over and sat down beside me, and we started talking. And he said, "I like what you're doing and stuff," and just being nice. And they were playing. They had the whatever jukebox or whatever going, and Melissa by the Allman Brothers came on.
Yeah.
And he said, I play a pretty good guitar lead to that. And I said, well, I sing it. And he said, well, let's do it. So we jumped up there and, me and Toy, and played Melissa, which was cool. And then we got the whole band up there, and we ended up doing a bluegrass version of Can't You See?
Yeah.
So that was another high point.
That's pretty high point, yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty thrilling. So,
yeah, I'd say that was pretty thrilling.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Should I just keep going with this tale, or?
Yes, you should keep going with this tale.
Because I'm trying to be as linear as I can, because there's a lot of twists and turns. But
well, the twists and turns is what makes it interesting.
Yeah.
They're kind of like scars.
Well, Richard Waldrop got a job with Plum Hollow Band.
Right.
Went on the road with them, and they went on the road. They went out west,
Yeah,
for
they
playing
did.
ski resorts and stuff, and so he made the big time. He got the. Matter of fact, he told me one time that his favorite bed was a bunk on the bus. So Butch Turner joined us, and Butch is a great songwriter, great musician. We knew him from. I met him around the same time I met all those other
I played
guys.
music with his dad.
Oh yeah, with Festus.
Festus,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and so we Butch was going out getting us gigs, and Steve Metcalf kind of got involved with us, and I had known Steve. I met him like in '75, and then we kind of lost touch for a while, and I kind of re-met him, and so he was taking over. This would have been January of '80 or so. He was taking over Green Acres for Niles Cuthbertson.
Yep.
He was going to take over he made some kind of deal with Niles. Matter of fact, there's a podcast that Joe Kendrick did.
I was involved in that.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Steve talked about that, and he tells the story better than I do. But he said, "I promise y'all, I'll pay you more every time you play." So I think the first night he paid us $20. I can't remember if it was for the whole band or if it was a piece. I'm thinking it was made for the whole band. But it was in the middle of January. There's 8 inches of snow on the ground. There was like 20 people in there, and they were all huddled around the wood stove way in the back. We were up on the stage freezing our butts off. But we did it. We did the show and had a good time.
And who would have been in that part of Smoking Grass?
That was still Butch, me, Art, and Andy.
Okay.
And then later on, close around that time, a friend of Butch's, Keith Rich, came in, and he was a multi-instrumentalist. He mostly played fiddle with us, but he played steel some and banjo, and he's one of those guys. And so, of course, we played like 3 or 4 weekends in a row, and Steve would give us $1 more every time we played. That's the story.
Yeah.
I'll pay you more every time you play. So, but there was a few more people there every time, and it got to be, it got to be a pretty big thing, going on.
Yeah.
And we also, around that time, maybe a little bit before that, we got to open for Newgrass Revival, which was a big thrill because they've always been my second favorite band.
And that would have been the Courtney Johnson.
The Courtney Johnson, Curtis
Birch version.
Yeah, that's right. And they were, so kind of got to know those guys a little bit. And Steve got to know them real well.
Yeah, he did. Yes, he did.
But then we started going out and doing other gigs, playing around. I got married that year in 1980, but we were out gigging a lot. But everybody had day jobs too. So for me, I probably didn't. I don't really remember, to be honest with you. But at some point later that year in '80, Butch left and Keith left at the same time. So we got Lynn Dodson, who was living with Richard Waldrop on Lee Street. Of course, Richard was on the road all the time. So Lynn stepped into the bass slot, and we met this guy in Greenville, South Carolina, named C.J. Myers. He was from Pennsylvania, real hot, flashy flat picker, which we didn't have because I'm not a flat picker. I'm barely a rhythm player. I was just keeping up,
I think
basically.
you're being modest, but we'll go with
No,
that.
it's the truth. I mean, I'm not a bluegrass player. I never have been. I've been in plenty of bluegrass jams, but I can't keep up with those guys. And, you know, we were playing really fast stuff, and CJ could play fast. I mean, he was lightning fast. So we started getting some pretty big response from the crowds then, and started getting more gigs. Got into a place called the Old Prospector in Charlotte, and we used to pack that place out. That was a great gig. And then around that time, there was a couple guys that CJ got up with somehow. Danny Darling and Tom Clayton, and they were salesmen that had worked together for some company, and they both had either quit or the company went out of business or something. So they decided they were going to form a company, and we were going to be the product. Smoking Grass was going to be the product. 5 String Enterprises was what they called it.
It's great.
So we were employees. They were paying us a paycheck every week. We talked Art into quitting his day job because he had a young, you know, it was a big thing for him, and we kind of guilt tripped him into it, you know, but talked him into quitting his job and going on the road. So we played a lot all over the place. Mostly stuff that we could drive to,
Right.
you know, from home, but we did a few overnight things, but I always called it the never-ending Tri-County tour because it was, you know, Cleveland, Rutherford, you know,
Yes.
down into South Carolina some, you know.
Yeah.
And we did that for about a year, you know, just play. And it was around the time of the Urban Cowboy.
Yeah.
So we played a lot of places with mechanical bulls and stuff.
Wow,
I mean, we
yeah.
weren't really what they were looking for, but on a Wednesday night, they put a bluegrass band in there.
Sure.
Nobody know the difference, you know. So we did a lot of that stuff. And around the end of 1981, it kind of petered out. I think everybody just got kind of tired of everybody. You know how it is when you're in a band.
Oh, yes, a band. Shelf life.
Yeah, so we just kind of. I basically tendered my resignation because I was tired of it. I was tired of driving, you know. And so the band split up, and.
That's good. That's good. Well, we're going to take a break here.
All right. Okay. I've been windblown, but I'm going home. Got some friends I want to see in North Carolina. There's a girl back there, the moment she don't care, but I'm gonna make her mine if I ever find her. When I say hello Blue Ridge Mountains, wrap me in your cloudy arms. Hide me on a hillside 20 miles from the nearest farm. I'll say goodbye to my sweet dream, a dream I never knew. Well, I can live without my dreams as long as I have you. Well, I'm gonna stop at the next bar I see, buy myself a couple of beers. Well, I'll think about a dozen odd friends, maybe shed a couple of homesick tears. Well, how many more lonely crossroads, and how many willing hearts must I pass just to make it back to my only home? And just how long will my homecoming last? When I say hello Blue Ridge Mountains, wrap me in your cloudy arms, and hide me on a hillside 20 miles from the nearest farm. I'll say goodbye to my sweet dream, the dream I never knew. Well, I can live without my dreams long as I have you.
I'm back here with Dale Brittain, and he just got to the end of Smoking Grass Saga, so
Yeah.
we're moving to the next
Sad
chapter
but true.
in this musical journey.
Yeah. Well, that kind of ended it for a while.
Did you get burnt out, I guess? I mean, you do.
Yeah, I didn't play any gigs. I didn't really do much of anything. We were, I think we were living in Lenore then, so I was kind of far away from everybody else. You know?
Right.
And I just kind of went through, just a rough couple years, really, not having that in my life, So
Oh, it makes a difference, yeah.
And in fact, there for a while, I didn't even have a guitar for probably 2 or 3 years. And I started kind of, coming out of the fog of it, around about 84 or so. So I ordered this guitar, sight unseen, from Mandolin Brothers, a D18, 1979 D18. I called him up and said, I don't want to spend more than $1,000. And he said, well, I got this D18 here. And he strummed it over the phone, which, obviously you can't tell anything over the phone. But they sent it to me on spec, and I played it. It's kind of hard to play when I first got it. But I had Carl McIntyre put some new frets on it and stuff, and still got the pickup that Carl put in it.
I still have 2 guitars with Carl McIntyre.
It still sounds great to this day. It's a passive. It sounds really good. Mm-hmm. But he did a fret job on it, and then just recently I got the neck reset, so now it plays great. But,
who did the neck reset? Just
Ken. Crap, I can't think of his last. It's Mountain Home Guitars he's up in Candler.
Okay.
I can't think of his last name. His first name's Ken. But
okay, that's cool.
But yeah, he did a neck reset, made it a lot easier to play. So it's back to being my main guitar now. But I got that, like I said, in '84 or so, and started plinking around on it and trying to get back in shape.
Mm-hmm.
And was mostly just playing in jams. There would be picking parties here and there. And
that's Cleveland County. They're everywhere.
Yeah, and then, I don't know, around 90 or so, I went with a friend to see Nancy Griffith in Charlotte. Mm-hmm. And they had an opening act, which was, they weren't bad, but they weren't that great either. And I was sitting there the whole time they were on, just like going, I can do better than that, Right. So that kind of lit a fire under me. And I said, if they can do it, then I can do it. So I started practicing more. Started booked a lot of stuff in Charlotte. There was a chain of restaurants called Rainbow Deli that I got into. There was like 3 or 4 of them. And
this is a solo gig?
This was solo. But yeah, I've been solo ever since.
Okay, so you've been solo all this time since?
All this time. Since Smoke Grass split up, I have not been in a band.
Okay.
I've had some, other than informal, I've got friends up in Michigan that'll come down and play with me, and we've done some shows, but it's not really a band, But anyway, I started practicing again, started getting out and playing again. And this one branch of the Rainbow Deli was up at University area in Charlotte. And at the time, Carrot Top, the comedian, was living up there.
Yeah.
And he started coming in there, and he really liked John Prine. So, the first time he came in, I didn't know who he was. That guy looks familiar, So I did a Prine song, and he came up to me talking during the break. Man, I just love John Prine, blah, blah, blah. I still didn't know who he was till the bartender told me. So then he started coming in there a lot, So that was kind of cool, because he was just starting to kind of take off then, But I played up there a lot. I was working in Huntersville and playing 3 or 4 nights a week, which was just brutal because I live in Gastonia, But I was doing it. I was young. I could do it, And, I just, around that time, around 90, it would have been 92, somebody told me that they were having music at the River Rat down at Lake Wiley. Yeah. Which was run by a guy named Al Powell. It was who's from Gastonia. And back then, if you wanted to go drinking in Gastonia, you had to go to Charlotte, or everybody went to the River Rat. Yeah. I mean, that place was, it was just where everybody in Gastonia went. They had great food. They started out in a small place, and then they built a new place, which was really big and had a nice patio, and he started having live music out there. So I got in touch with him, and he hired me in the summer of '92. And then he hired me back in the summer of '93, summer of '94. Turned out I played there for 17 summers.
Wow, that's a good job.
That's the longest job I ever had. Well, I worked for the phone company for 17 years, so they're equal. But every summer I was out there. Some summers it was every weekend, unless it was raining. There was another guy that did it that he and I would trade off with, but he was on the road some. So, and there was some summers he didn't play there at all, and I did every weekend.
With that, I guess you had to do a lot of Buffett covers, didn't you?
Oh man, I did. Yeah.
Summertime at the lake, I'm betting you.
Oh my God, those people love them some Buffett. You know?
Yeah, they do.
But I kind of got good doing that because I was doing it, you know,
so much. Yeah, I'm sure.
Because I don't practice. I'm just too lazy. I just don't practice. So my practicing is being on stage.
Right.
So if I go without gigs for a while, I start getting rusty.
Yeah.
But I got pretty good doing that, and I was doing the heck out of Margaritaville and Son of a Sailor, and you know, stuff like that. And
Pirate Looks at 40, I'm sure. Yeah.
Pirate Looks at 40. Yeah, that was yeah. And I did one song one night. I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was He Went to Paris or something like that. And I got finished, and this gal said, "Play some Buffett."
Yeah, that's about right.
Honey, that was Buffett. But most of them knew it, you know. And I was doing my original stuff down there and just mixing it up. And I'd have my buddies from Michigan. I really need to talk about them because these guys have been the main part of my musical life for the last 20 years. And it's Al Bates, who I met in Shelby at Sedgefield Apartments. He's a dobro, banjo, guitar, mandolin. He's a multi-instrumentalist. He lives in Kalamazoo. And he and I have been basically musical partners. We can go for a year and sit down and play like we've been playing all year long, you know, because we've been doing it so long. And there's another guy from up there named Wes Pettinger who is a great banjo player who's on my CD. And he runs a bluegrass festival up there now. It's Charlotte. They spell it like Charlotte, but they say Charlotte, which has been going on for 45 years. He took it over. I think, in the 40th year.
Do you go up there and play?
I used to go every year. I skipped a couple of years, but I went up there this past about a month ago or 2 months ago and just hung out with him, you know, and picked some. But I played at his first Charlotte Bluegrass Festival.
Right, when he took it over.
When he took it over. And those people are hardcore traditional bluegrass. So Al and I went out and did the singer-songwriter thing in the afternoon with guitar and dobro. Right. It went over okay, but it was the first time we played 2 sets on Friday afternoon, and the first one I was just like shaking like a leaf, you know, because I knew I was worried about how it's going to go over, you know. The second set, I was like, I don't care, we're just going to get out there and do it. Right. So that went better. And then on that night, we got a couple other hot pickers up from up there. Lloyd Douglas, who's played with, I think he played with Jim and Jesse, and he's another monster musician, banjo player, guitar, and his brother Chris, who's the bass player. And we put together a little band with Al and Wes and me and those 2 guys, and we did like 30 minutes of kind of grass stuff. Yeah. We did like a High on a Mountaintop, a Hot Rise and stuff like that, and did some of my stuff, and it went over really well. And you know, they were trying to get us to come back for an encore, and I said, we don't know anything. We don't know anything else.
Sorry, this is it.
We had 20 minutes to rehearse, and you just heard it, you know, because we were out in the parking lot going, okay, this one goes like this, but it went over really well. But I just wanted to mention those guys because they're all Wes and Al are both on my CD, and there's another guy on there, Tommy Dunn, who's a bass player from up there. So it was actually recorded up there in Kalamazoo, but. So, you know, I've been picking with those guys all along, doing the River Rat thing all along, and I was working for AT&T, and around 2009, they were going through some restructuring and laying people off, and because of seniority, I got put on a noon to 8:30 shift, which meant that I couldn't do a Friday night gig at the River Rat, you know. Couldn't do. And at the same time, he decided he only wanted to do music on Fridays because his business was falling off. So that was it. I mean, I said, I asked him if he could, throw a dog a bone, and let me do a couple Saturdays. He said, no, I just can't afford it. So that was it. That was the end of it. So then I went into another kind of fallow period. I was still going up to Michigan every year playing with those guys, but it was nothing, not really doing any gigs. And eventually I ended up in a call center, working in a call center for AT&T in Charlotte, which I just hated. So I decided to just retire, go ahead and leave. And this was 2014. And so the last Friday of June of 2014 was my last day of work. Then the next week I didn't do anything. Then the next week I started calling around trying to get gigs and started practicing. First place I called was Newt's. And, I said, y'all should hire me, I'm pretty good. They said, okay. Then I went to talk to Jamie.
Yeah.
Got in down there. The first time I played at Newt's was like in September 2014. And one of my friends from high school, Liz, brought a bunch of her friends, and it was just packed out. I don't know where all those people came from, but I thought, wow, I can do this, So I started playing at Newt's a lot. Started playing at the Dragonfly, and I just fell in love with that place.
That's a great venue.
It's
particularly for a
favorite one I have ever done.
For singer-songwriter, it's great.
The acoustics are great. Everybody, for the most part, will sit there and listen to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then Roger Holland approached me about playing at Newgrass, so I played down there a few times, but I kind of got shuffled off the rotation.
Yeah, it's kind of hard for one person to hit much there.
Yeah, you really need a band.
I've seen good musicians struggle with the one person there.
I really wasn't drawing in there, but I draw great in the Dragonfly.
Yeah, Dragonfly's a great place.
But so right now the Dragonfly is basically my home. That's where I do. I'm doing 5 or 6 there next year, at least through September, and then probably a couple more later on in the year. But when I started playing there, because when I first started, like on Wednesday night, there'd be 5 people in there.
Right, yeah.
So I would just start talking, just telling stories, and I'd tell, like one of the stories I tell is one of the times when I was AWOL from the Navy, I was out in Colorado, and I was coming home. I was going to hitchhike home. And I didn't have any money. I was flat broke. And I was so broke that I had been eating in a soup kitchen every day at noon, and that was the only meal I was getting. So I said, I got to get home somehow. So I planned it out. I went to the soup kitchen at noon. I ate all I could eat, and I got out on the highway and started hitching. And I eventually ended up real late that night. A guy picked me up. And he had a trailer with some horses in it, and he was going to Amarillo. And I knew that I-40 went through Amarillo, so I said, well, if I can at least get down there on the highway, then I got a straight shot. And plus, it was the middle of February, and I was freezing.
Oh, man.
So I had the prospect all night of being in a nice warm cab of a truck, Right. So I took that ride with him. We got to Amarillo. He bought me breakfast. Got out on the road, started back out on 40. Stood out there for like 5 or 6 hours. Nobody picked me up. And finally, this guy stopped. And I got in the car. And he was like playing ZZ Top or something. And it seemed like a really nice guy. He had a cooler full of beer in the back, like Pearl beer, which, any port in the storm. True. So we were just going down the road, just drinking beer, talking, and having a good time. And we got out in the countryside. And back then it was before 40 was finished. So parts of it was just, future I-40s, 2-lane roads. So we're driving along, and he looked over at me and he said, "Do you have any money?" I thought, oh, here we go. I said, "No, man, I'm broke. I ain't flat broke. I had a pint of tequila. That's all I had." And he said, "Well, I'll tell you what." He said, "There's a little store down here that we could go in there and we could knock it over and probably come out of there with a couple $100 a piece, And I said, "I think I'll pass." And so he took me on down the road and let me out. And we pulled into the rest area, and he said, you probably better get out. And I said, yeah, I guess so. So I don't know if he went back and robbed the place or not. But
it's a great story.
He was, so, and then I'll tell that story, and then I'll do like the great filling station hold up. So I started doing that. That's what I was getting around to was, I realized I had all these stories from stuff that had happened that were true that kind of fit with these songs.
Sure.
So I started doing that, and people seemed to like it, and more people kept coming.
Stories are a good part. I mean, Michael Reno Harold's making a living at it.
Well, I was going to be the sensitive singer-songwriter, James Taylor, look at the audience. Even he gets up and dances around and, stuff now, but people want you to interact with them. Especially on that level.
They want to be entertained.
Well, exactly. And that's the thing. Tom Paxton told me that one time. I went to Swannanoa one year for the folk thing, and he and I hit it off real well. And I hung out with him and his wife all weekend, and we were talking about songwriting and stuff. And he said, when I go on stage, I'm an entertainer. I'm not a songwriter. I'm an entertainer.
Right.
And I kind of took that to heart because, especially a place like that that's real intimate, you're on eye level with people, and they're right up on top of you, So it's just like it's kind of like sitting in the living room, So that's what I like about it. So that's where I'm at now. I'm mostly just a Dragonfly guy now, and Steve Metcalf's trying to get me to play up at Barley's, but I hadn't really.
Yeah, Barley's good.
Yeah, I hadn't really reached out to him yet. I went up there the other.
It's a haul from Gastonia, though.
Yeah, I would probably maybe I could crash at his house or something.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to go out to lunch with him, and we would go in there, and he's in like Mr. Promoter mode, handing out CDs and stuff.
He's always in Mr. Promoter mode.
So I'll probably call him after the first of the year, but I'll be doing more Dragonfly stuff, and probably there's a place up in Hickory that's kind of similar to the Dragonfly called the Hickory Wine Shop that I'm going to try to get back in. It's under new ownership, but I think I can get back in there too. So just enough to keep, keep interested in it.
Sure.
So
it's a great story.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
And I appreciate you taking the time to come tell it.
Well, thanks for having me. I've been thinking about this and trying to order everything in my mind, and I'm sure I left a lot of stuff out.
Well, that's a pretty good story. So I'm glad you shared it with us. And again, thank you for being here.
All right. Well, thanks, Ed. Chill in the air, it's cotton candy time. We're walking down the midway, just trying to pass the time. Well, I saw you standing, your face turned towards the sky, watching the fireworks with a tear in your eye. Well, I recall the time that I walked here with you. Held your hand in mine. I loved you true. You used to meet me at the water wheel and fall into my arms there. Your touch I can still feel. Baby, don't worry if you lose me. Just walk right up that hill and meet me at the water wheel. Light and noise between us, we were pressed from every side. The carnies and the hustlers, children screaming on the rise. Well, I reached out to touch you, but the crowd kept me away. Well, I don't think you saw me, I don't think you heard me say, meet me at the water wheel. Fall into my arms there, your touch I long to feel. Baby, don't worry if you lose me, just walk right up that hill and meet me at the water wheel. We'll go on and give a quarter to the old man in the booth. He will call your friends and lovers, he'll sing happy birthday too. And That's where you can find me, my face turned towards the sky, watching the fireworks, the tear in my eye. Won't you meet me at the water wheel and fall into my arms there, your touch I long to feel. Oh baby, don't worry if you lose me, just walk right up that hill and meet me at the water wheel. Meet me at the water wheel, the end of the midway, won't you? Meet me at the water wheel.